I'm joined now by our regular US correspondent, Ed Blakely. Ed, good morning.
Good morning. What a morning. Impeachment is on.
That's exactly right. We'll get to that one in a moment, but starting out with Russia today, as the Russian Prime Minister and the entire Russian government, bar President Vladimir Putin, has resigned immediately after Putin proposed a constitutional overhaul. Ed, what's going on?
Who knows? I didn't know the Constitution meant anything there. It doesn't in the United States anymore, so Russia certainly doesn't. Uh, this may be kind of a facade in Russia, trying to present the notion that they have a constitutional government, from what I read in the story, when in fact it's still a dictatorship. But I think there's a considerable unrest in Russia regarding the government's form and the legitimacy of representatives. So there's probably going to be a bit of a test of whether some form of representative democracy will yield the results they want. Uh, Putin is very popular, so he might actually win a popular election. And that's what he's really after. It doesn't do him good to lock up leaders and things like this. It'll leave a stench on his memory. He doesn't really want that. So I suspect he's trying to create some form of constitutional monarchy before he leaves, because there's no chance that there'll be a real elected president in Russia.
Implications for the United States?
Well, gee, it's hard to say. Uh, as those of you who are watching, you see the people were marching over with the impeachment documents. The United States is certainly trying to be a democracy. Uh, Mr. Trump is going in the opposite direction. It seems pretty clear now from all the evidence that Trump did it. He committed bribery, which is a felony, and that's the only felony mentioned in the Constitution for removing a president with impeachment. So it's pretty clear he did the deed, and popular support is swinging in the other direction against him. He may win this victory because it could be a Pyrrhic victory with him losing the Senate in the next set of elections. There are 5 senators who are very vulnerable, and they could all lose. And then the House and the Senate would be hands of the Democrats, and he'd surely be impeached at that point. So he's on the horns of a dilemma. Mr. Giuliani, his self appointed savior, could send him right down the drain.
Mm. Well, indeed, there's been more and more coming out this week about Giuliani's adventures digging for Biden dirt in the Ukraine. Look, we mentioned that meeting with associates of the Ukrainian gas tycoon Dmitry Firtash, a man Giuliani had previously blasted for his links with organized crime and who he claimed to have zero dealings with before a photo proving otherwise emerged this week. How much further has this rabbit hole got to go, Ed?
I don't know, but I think the rabbit has already escaped. The question is, how deep is the hole going to be? And it's uncertain to me how deep this hole can really get, but it's getting deeper and deeper. There's no doubt about the crime. And I think Trump was a little alarmed himself when he discovered how much was going on uh, in his name behind his back. And so now he's like Nixon. He has to cover up because people working in his name have committed more vile sins than he had imagined. He wanted one thing, but he certainly didn't want this to out him and bring him down.
This is a very simple, sort of basic question. How soon until we see the Senate trial go ahead and conclude?
Well, go ahead, I can help you with. It'll go ahead by the middle of next week. Conclusion, I would think, is going to take 4 to 6 weeks. And the reason for this, I think there are 4 Republican senators who are going to ask for evidence and for people to testify. They'll limit that testimony, though. probably to 2 or 3 on each side. Now, what the Republicans will try to do is call Biden. Biden has no reason to be called because he's certainly not a subject of the actions of the president. As a matter of fact, he's the one who is being persecuted in all of this. That's like calling the person who was murdered to come and testify in the murder trial. It makes no sense at all. But that will be the attempt by the Republicans to winnow down the Democratic people. Now, Bolton will probably testify, and I have no confidence in what Bolton will do. He has to stick with the Republican Party. Remember that, in some way, some shape, or some form. How he will manage to do that is not clear, but he certainly will give it a try. The best way for him to do that is say what he didn't know rather than what he did know. Mulvaney and others, the president will do everything he can to block them. But if he blocks them all, he's just throwing himself into the other charge. That is obstruction of Congress. And this time it would be the Senate. So he's between a rock and a hard place here. I suspect this is going to be a full trial with people testifying. The president's own lawyers, though, from a letter that got out yesterday, were involved in the plot. They were trying to defend the guy who was going to give testimony from the Ukraine, knowing full well his testimony was about this deed. So they were okaying, with the president's full knowledge, the use of a presidential lawyer to defend this man. So it just doesn't look good. It looks like it's worse than Nixon. Nixon never tried this. He just tried to lop off the heads of the investigators, but not the entire Congress. So this is getting worse and worse. I don't know a way out for the president at this point. He's going around holding rallies, trying to get local support. That's going to backfire on him very soon.
It's very much like a black hole at the middle of this administration right now, just sucking absolutely everybody into it.
It is. It is. Pompeo's career is ruined. Barr's career is ruined. Mulvaney's career is ruined. Now, I say this from what I know, not what's worked out in history. We thought Nixon's career was ruined and he came back to be president. But these people have done things that are so bad that no matter what they try to do in the future, it's going to be held over their heads. I don't know how far people will go to save the man. It makes no sense at all.
Iran, this is ongoing, although it is another situation that lacks a bit of clarity, I would have to say. The country has admitted fault in taking down a Ukrainian passenger jet by mistake, killing 176 on board.
Big mistake.
Big mistake, obviously. Protests continuing in the country. The American response, though, is just, to me, confusing. What's actually going on?
Well, what's going on here is that the United States is glad the regime is about to change, and it will. It has no place to go but down. But for the United States to be involved in that would make a regime that might be as bad or worse. So the U.S. has to play a very, very careful game. Moreover, the Europeans are showing some anxiety about Iran and saying, if you trigger that nuclear stuff, we're coming after you too. So the people in Iran are not stupid. I've been to Iran. Iranians are very clever. They get news from all over the world. They know they are cornered, and this government can't lead them out. They like to live the good life. If you're in Iran, it's like being in some city in the United States. People there are well-dressed, clear, clever, well-educated. They are not going to go along with any sophistry. So what the United States may have accidentally done through this Ukrainian fiasco, in which the United States is guilty as well, is spark a revolution internally that cannot be turned off now. The danger here is, just like with Trump, they'll try to do something any more adventurous to hold their power.
And with China, the Chinese trade war, we remember the Chinese trade war, of course. Trump has signed an initial deal with China to, amongst other things, open Chinese markets to more American companies, commit China to buying an additional $200 billion worth of American goods and services, and provide greater protection for American tech secrets. Most of Trump's tariffs, however, still in place. Ed, this sounds fantastic. Easy to win. What's going on?
Well, I think the Chinese want to do something symbolically. This trade deal is not a much bigger trade situation than was there before, but the Chinese recognize that their economy is really not in great shape. They're going up now, not in double digits, but single digits. Factories are closing in China. They could have a little revolution on their own hands if they don't get things moving again. Trading with the United States has always been the primary trade partner for China, and they want to get that back. This is a very small 5 or 10% of their trade volume that they're talking about. They'll get that back, but instability right now is not in their favor after Hong Kong and the Taiwan votes.
And in Puerto Rico, we haven't spoken about them in a while, but we have a lot in the past. Trump is set to lift a hold on over $8 billion of aid to Puerto Rico, but it's not without some considerable restrictions, fearing mismanagement and corruption. Ed, thoughts?
Who's withholding for corruption? You might have to run that by me again. Look, maybe it is that the corrupt know the corrupt. Puerto Rico has been notoriously corrupt forever. Trying to get any kind of thing happening there where there isn't money under the table, around the table, and on the table is very, very hard. The only way to do that is something that was done many years ago, back in the Roosevelt administration, and that is put in an administrator. The United States did that, and that was the time that a real government was formed and real advances were made. And I would suggest that again. If you don't want the money to go down a rat hole, put in an administrator. That can be done under the U.S. Constitution. It's been done before. Remember, an administrator was put in the city of New York for financial reasons. Congress can pass an act that inserts an administrator. There are plenty of good ones around who can administer that money to make sure it's spent in the right way.
And amongst Democrats for 2020, things getting ugly between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders at the debate this week. Differing accounts of a supposed 2018 encounter where Warren claims, Bernie denies, Sanders said a woman would not be able to win president in 2020. I mean, any thoughts on this one, Ed? Surely the Dems need...
Well, Bernie just said what is. A woman probably doesn't have a chance now. The American people want someone who looks like a president, feels like a president that used to be. So Bernie is right if he said it. He shouldn't have said it because it's not the right thing to say. Elizabeth Warren is now running scared. And when you run scared, you look weak. That's really unfortunate. I think she had a chance several weeks ago, but that chance is by her. If Biden bides his time, he will be the eventual winner.
Certainly, I was saying after Hillary Clinton's loss in 2016, the same thing. A woman wouldn't be president in 2020. The glass ceiling is solidly in place there. I mean, she wasn't a perfect candidate, but certainly it didn't. I certainly don't think it helped. But Democrats, they really need to avoid surely tearing strips off each other like this.
Yeah, I don't agree with you on that. I think she was a bad candidate, no doubt about it. But after Obama, we certainly weren't going to have a black. A woman could have been uh, somebody like Haley. Uh, she wasn't a candidate for president at the time, but Nikki Haley certainly positioned herself for that
Mm.
and is a likely potential for the presidency. I think a woman will be president, maybe not in this next 8 years, but look out for Nikki.
Well, Ed, mate, thanks very much. We will catch you again next week.
Yeah, well, my eyes, you can't tell it, but one of them is functioning and the other one is out. But I had the patch taken off today, so I don't look like the real raider that I
That is a relief, mate. We'll hopefully catch you in person in the studio next week.
am. Yeah, let's give that a try. Take care, mate.
Fabulous. Thanks, mate.